Thank you, moderator. The Director of Programs and Initiative of the Pacific Island Forum, the Permanent Secretary for Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport, and joining us remotely, the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the Executive Director of the International Trade Center, and the Acting Director General of the Melanesian Spirit Group. Excellencies, distinguished participants, all protocols observed. In the opening of this joint symposium on trade finance this morning, I would like to share with you just two simple notions. On the one hand, the strong belief that trade was, is, and will be the main driving engine for peace and prosperity worldwide and in the Pacific. And on the other hand, the recognition that this engine needs a little boost in this region. So, trade as the main driver for peace, prosperity, jobs, incomes, investment, it's not an abstract idea. It was the founding notion of the European Union. When in 1950, Robert Schuman proposed a joint common market on coal and steel between Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, that was based on the notion that trade would cement what is now the European Union. And the notion was very simple. After years of war and economic crisis, he simply believed that you don't want to go to war with the countries which sell what you buy and buy what you sell. And that selling and buying between those countries would generate more opportunities than doing it alone. So based on this idea, after 70 years, the European Union has become the single largest free trade area in the world, 450 million consumers, and also the first international trade power, ahead of China and the United States of America. So this tested concept is one that we want to share with the rest of the world. And in the Pacific, it takes the form of the offer we put to Pacific Island countries of the economic partnership agreements. This offer has been taken up by Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Samoa, the Solomon Islands, and we have advanced talks with some other countries, including Tonga. This concept of economic partnership agreements gives duty-free, quota-free access to the single largest free market in the world. And let me insist on that. It will provide you with far better opportunities than any of the development assistance you can receive from development partners. From 2014 to 2020, the European Union has delivered 884 million euros of development assistance to the Pacific. 884 million euros. In 2019, and that's an average year, trade volumes between the Pacific and the European Union amounted to 2.5 billion euros. So you can see that the prosperity, the growth, the income, the job creation, the potential for investment is far better from trade than for international assistance from development partners. Having said that, we recognize that in this part of the world, the Pacific, there are obstacles to really reap the benefits of trade. This is the reason why, as part of our assistance to the region, we have a regional program on the Pacific regional integration, which comprises several components, which are aimed at addressing the bottlenecks and the obstacles that we have identified jointly with the Pacific Island Forum and other international and regional organizations working on trade issues in the region. Last time I was here, it was for the launch of the Spirit Project, strengthening Pacific intra-regional and international trade. And it was based on the acknowledgement that trade facilitation needs to be further strengthened and developed in this region, to develop not only the domestic market of the Pacific region, which is the same pathway as the one we took in the European Union, developing the strength of the domestic internal market first before we go to conquer external markets, but also that technical assistance and capacity building was a must if we want really to provide the Pacific with the real opportunities to take advantage of international trade and domestic trade. We recognize that in the trade between the Pacific and the rest of the world, agricultural products occupy a very prominent place. And that's the reason why, as another component of our Pacific Regional Integration Program, we focus on agriculture trade facilitation. A third component, and of course it goes without saying, international trade is a matter for the private sector. This is the reason why, as a part of our program to enhance trade in the region, we focus on a private sector development initiative. It has been mentioned many times, but the structure of the companies involved in trade in the Pacific are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And that's the reason why, as the last component of our assistance to the region to develop trade, we work with the Asian Development Bank on this micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise project. In total, that will provide 37 million euros to the region. And I think it will allow to make a difference on the trade finance, because when you go to the bank and ask for a loan, what does the bank look at? They look at the opportunities of the project you put on the table, the size of the expected income generated. And this is the reason why it's important to increase the opportunities in the region and internationally. They also look at the threats or the risks generated by the project you present to them. And this is the reason why it is important to lower the risk, to decrease the transaction cost, and to increase the certainty of the income generation. So I will stop here, but let me just re-insist on the two notions I shared with you this morning, which is the belief anchored in the European Union, but which is valid for the rest of the world, that trade will be the main engine for recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, and the recognition that not all the regions in the world are equal in taking these opportunities, and certainly addressing the shortcomings or the obstacles or the weaknesses regarding trade in the Pacific region is a task that we will endeavor to tackle with you in common. I will have to leave you now because I was just booked for the opening of this joint symposium, but I leave you in good hands with 4 members of my team who will remain throughout the symposium. Don't hesitate to push them, to ask questions from them, to tap into their expertise. And let me just note, and my team is Massimo and Barbara and Shaleshni and Marga on the other side. Just 2 days after the International Women's Day, I have a gender balance team. Thank you very much.